Hello
Hello.
again.
Yep.
How are you?
Yeah, yeah. We were actually talking about any potential doppelgangers you might have. Henry finds that you look like Noam Chomsky. I said you look like Lula da Silva.
I prefer Lula da Silva.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's jump right back into the conversation. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some other Latin American countries. We had a long conversation about Cuba. Now let's start with Venezuela. So obviously Venezuela, things haven't been going very well in recent times. Ever since pretty much Hugo Chavez died in 2014, it's been going downhill. We have hyperinflation. Maduro has been taking an increasingly authoritarian stance, seemingly. So explain a little bit how the Venezuelan political system works and why people are upset at what Maduro did with the Constituent Assembly. And like Juan Guaido is the leader of the actual assembly. It's kind of a mess. So explain a little bit how the political system in Venezuela works.
Well, firstly, I think the political system in Venezuela is, of course, different than Cuba. It has its own history. It came as a result of the election victory by Hugo Chavez at the beginning. At the end of the 21st century, end of the 20th century, and he won the election, became president. And since that time, he's been developing his program of 21st century socialism to try to use the natural resources of Venezuela for the well-being of the Venezuelan people. Also, right from the beginning, Chavez said he believes not only in participatory democracy, but also in protagonistic democracy. That is, to instill in the minds of the people and the actions of the people at the lowest level, at the grassroots, that this revolution is their revolution, and from the communes and the base, it is up to them to build it from the bottom up. Now, when Chavez passed away, sure, that was a great loss, but no one can replace a leader such as him as far as his being charismatic, his knowledge, his ideology. But when Maduro won the elections after Chavez passed away, a new wave of disinformation was unfurled against Nicolas Maduro, saying that the elections were fraudulent and questionable and all that, even from so-called some of the people on the left. They jumped on that as well, especially in Canada. But, there are Canadian observers who took part in these elections who observed it. The elections were not fraudulent. Even Jimmy Carter, I don't think we could say Jimmy Carter is a Marxist. He said the best electoral system in the world is Venezuela, and so they won the elections. And since that time, what happened since 2000, as soon as Trump came to power, you have actually started with Obama. Let us be frank. Obama, right during the time when he was opening up with Cuba in 2016, right? In 2014, in December 2014, he made a statement: "We are opening up relationship with Cuba." Very nice. But one day later, on December 18th, 2016, Obama signed the first executive order in order to impose sanctions against Venezuela. And in March 2015, 3 months later, he declared that Venezuela is a threat, can you believe it, a threat to the national security of Venezuela, thus more sanctions. And this has been going on for a long time. Now, these sanctions have been devastating to the Venezuelan economy. Even established economists said recently that in a 2-year period recently, the lives of already 40,000 Venezuelans were lost as a result of these sanctions. And those who, support sanctions in the United States, they are very cynical, bro. They say, we impose sanctions in order to make the economy scream so the people will revolt. The same method they used after Allende. Allende was elected to power in 1973. So it's a basic playbook by the United States to impose sanctions difficulties to try to push the people into revolt. Now, you mentioned the issue of Guaido and the Venezuelan revolution. They only lost really one election. It was to that National Assembly where the opposition became the main force in the National Assembly, and they elected Juan Guaido as a Speaker of the National Assembly. Okay, they had that. At the same time, there was a lot of irregularities in how the opposition installed their own deputies. But to make a long story short, Juan Guaido, with the help of the United States and Trudeau in Canada and others, declared, "I am the president of Venezuela," the interim president of Venezuela. There's nothing in the in a Venezuelan constitution that says that someone who is the president of a national assembly can just automatically declare that the real president is no longer there. I am the real president. So since that time, the United States and Canada has been playing a very important role with the Lima Group, which is established of countries such as Colombia, Chile, Brazil, and other big stalwarts of democracy and human rights aligned with Trudeau to try to interfere in the internal affairs of Venezuela and try to impose Guaido as the real president of Venezuela. Now, a new elections took place to the National Assembly several months ago. Of course, he was not elected. So the only, small technical issue of validity, he is no longer in the National Assembly. So protagonistic democracy where the people defend their own revolution. And therefore, that is why Maduro is still in power. And I think I would be amiss to not call out Justin Trudeau, because Justin Trudeau helped to form the Lima Group with Colombia, Brazil, and others in order to carry out Trump's dirty work in Venezuela. I say that if it was not for Trudeau, the Lima Group would never have existed. They needed this poster boy image to hide the fact that it is Trump that is pushing the Lima Group to organize a coup d'etat against President Maduro. And now Trudeau's just about very isolated. The only countries that still support Guaido are, for example, UK and Colombia, Brazil, etc. Even the European Union no longer support Guaido. It's not working. But Trudeau is sticking to Guaido. So I think this is an important point for Canadians to take into mind, the dirty role that Justin Trudeau played and is still playing against the Venezuelan government. And of course, this is his way in an indirect, hypocritical manner of trying to subvert the Cuban Revolution, because he knows very well the closest ally of Cuba in the region is Venezuela.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, why do you think, as a follow-up to what your answer here, why do you think Trudeau is doing this? Because I remember when Fidel Castro passed away, Justin Trudeau made a public display, and he was very fond of Castro himself. He said he met him when he was younger, and his father was friends with Castro and all that. So I'm not going to go as far as say that Trudeau is a communist or a sympathizer or anything, but he himself was fond of Castro and was upset when he died. So why do you think he would go this far to support someone like Juan Guaido, who is fundamentally opposed to Venezuelan or Bolivarian socialism?
He made this positive statement with the passing of Fidel. I saw it. Now, 2-3 days, of course, this created a backlash in the American and the Canadian media. Now, in a press conference, someone, I think from the CBC, asked him, Trudeau, is Fidel Castro a dictator or not? He said, yes, he's a dictator. So that undid his very positive statement with regards to passing of Fidel. In the Canadian government, now this has come out recently, there is a very important lobby, pro-Israel lobby, in the Canadian government. The person who's heading that, Kotler, he is the most important pro-Israel lobbyists in the Canadian government. Now, why I'm saying this is important? Because Venezuela, Chavez before, and Maduro now are known to be the country that is most in support of Palestine against the Israeli apartheid treaty. They're known for it, and Canada does not want to have that country over there. So I think these are the three main reasons for which Justin Trudeau has been really involved in the issue of Venezuela.
You mentioned Chavez nationalizing industries in Venezuela. I think the largest, obviously, there's oil. Venezuela is the largest oil reserve in the world, and Chavez nationalized all that in what we call PDVSA, or Petróleos de Venezuela, right? And however, despite all that, in recent years, its economy has pretty much collapsed. The country suffers from hyperinflation after extensive quantitative easing to maintain very, very extensive social programs. So how much do you think that Chavez and his successor Maduro are to blame for the current situation in Venezuela?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer. One has to take into account the sanctions that have been taking place against the Venezuelan government since the time of Obama, 2014 to 2015, and increased manyfold with Trump. If Venezuelan people were left alone without sanctions, they could work out their own problems. They could improve their own political and social structure. But they are sort of in a bind because they are continuously fighting this onslaught by the United States and its allies.
All right. That pretty much sums up, I guess, all your all the research you did over the past few years about Venezuela. So I guess as a last for the last topic, I guess I'm going to talk a little bit about Bolivia as well, because over the last 2 years, there's been so much movement and political turmoil in Bolivia. There's a lot to unpack there. I heard about Bolivia in the beginning from my political mentor, who actually met Carlos Mesa a long time ago. I think you know who Carlos Mesa is, the main opposition in Bolivia. But I wanted to ask mainly about what has happened since what you call the coup in Bolivia. So Evo Morales was, you would say, deposed after election watchdogs called the election that happened in 2019, I think. They called it fraudulent, and they found irregularities, and Morales obviously seeked asylum in Mexico since then. So now you have Luis Arce, I think, who's back in power. But in between then, when Morales was deposed, Jeanine Áñez became the president. And I remember seeing this very iconic video when she was walking into the house where the president is supposed to stay in, and she said the Bible returns. She was saying in Spanish, the Bible returns to the house or whatever, to the presidency, something to that effect.
And what a great example of Eurocentrism, right? U.S. centrism.
Right. And actually, I want to ask you specifically, so it doesn't become a 10-hour conversation about the dynamics, because Morales is I think the first native Bolivian president, the indigenous Bolivian in Venezuela. Bolivia is the only majority indigenous country where the majority of the population is indigenous versus descendants from Europeans. So explain the dynamic of that election and why you think he was deposed in the way he was deposed.
Well, actually, he wasn't deposed. I think the correct term was a coup d'état against Morales. Let's call a spade a spade. It was a coup d'état. They simply, even though he was, winning the elections, the OAS came in with a fraudulent set of statistics saying that the elections were rigged and all that. And then some of the army turned against Evo Morales. They surrounded him, and they literally he had to seek asylum. And it was a coup d'état. I don't think with you it was a coup d'état against an elected president. And of course, those people took power again. You mentioned the Añeñas and all that. Basically, racist white supremacists against the majority indigenous people in Bolivia. And since that time, well, I've been following carefully, and I think by the time Morales was overthrown forcefully and sent by plane for his own well-being, since that time, we've been speaking the last hour or so about participatory democracy, the role of the people in history. This is yet another example how in this case, and this is historically very justified, the most impoverished, discriminated against section of Bolivian society as part of Latin America, the indigenous people, they fought like for over a year with their bare hands in order to eventually win the election, despite massacres. 3 massacres actually took place. They actually won with their bare hands the elections, and the new mass representatives were elected president and vice president in Bolivia. I would say that episode in Bolivian history is crucial not only for Bolivia, but for all of Latin America. So despite all the attempts by the United States, that left-wing movement in Latin America is carrying on its building. And who knows, you mentioned Brazil. You perhaps know more about Brazil than I do, but the chances of Lula actually winning the election are very good. And so and Brazil is not a minor player, as you know. It's a major country in that area, and the chance of Lula winning is very good. And so whether it's Lula or the new president of Peru now, Bolivia, of course, I think that it's us in Canada, we have to support that. But I think we also have to call out the Trudeau government, because he supported the coup against Evo Morales. He didn't have anything to say against the brutality and repression in Chile. With regards to Colombia, also nothing as well, just against Venezuela and against Colombia and against Cuba. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so.
You mentioned actually I don't believe it, but you mentioned Peru, and that actually reminded me. I saw the news about the Peruvian election. It was a very, very close election in the end, and it was between obviously there was the conservative candidate was Keiko Fujimori, who was the daughter of Alberto Fujimori, who was the dictator in Peru for many years, and her opponent was Pedro Castillo. But I remember reading on in the news and on Twitter that he's actually a very interesting heterodox figure, because he says that he's a Marxist, has association with many trade unions and so on, but he has many positions, especially on social issues, that people in North America, here in Canada, in the US, if anyone is a leftist, would consider unacceptable. For example, he said he's against gay marriage. He's against legalizing marijuana. A lot of these positions that the left would support wholeheartedly in North America, he says that he's completely opposed to that, and I find that very interesting.
No, I see what you're saying. This is the case, but we have to give him a chance. Will he change his mind on that? And even if these are his positions, which we, Canadian American progressive, we cannot support it. But at the same time, despite that, he is the person to support in Peru. And then I guess it'll be up to the Peruvian people in the coming months and years to try to move him away from these very conservative positions. This is up to the Peruvian people. But I think if any American or Canadian leftist will be critical of him because of this, and in an indirect manner support any destabilization efforts against the new president of Peru, I think that this is not very much acceptable.
Yeah, I think that's generally a position of some portion of the left, I guess. But I can't say that I haven't seen people on Twitter, especially leftists, say that they they find that people who support Castillo are horrible because he has all these like terrible positions, and it's kind of it always happens. I don't know, like especially when I see fight within the left on Twitter or even in the media, it's always very over stuff like this. But that's neither here nor there. I'll let Henry take it away. It's his show, but he hasn't said anything or much. Henry, go ahead.
Yeah. It's sorry for speaking so little today. My Wi-Fi is just killing me right now. It's going well, so I ask my question. So John Bolton and other American foreign policy thinkers have called our hemisphere, right? The idea is our hemisphere.
Yeah.
And so in Bolivia, we see this nationalization process in agriculture and in infrastructure. And so you talk about this as being like a national security threat to the U.S. almost as an ideological threat. So can you explain how that ties in with the coup against Morales and against other movements in South America as well?
Well, the coup against Morales, unfortunately, it was very blatant. When it took place, you have the president of Tesla. What's his name? I forgot his name. The president of Tesla, who has all
Elon Musk. Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Go ahead.
He was very arrogant. He said, "We will coup who we want to coup." But they openly say, "We organize this coup in Bolivia because we want their natural resource there." Okay, so that is what happens there, and of course, since that he has never apologized and all that, and the media just present him as this cool guy, going off to space and all that. So that's what we're up against in the Western countries and Canada with regards to these movements. They have these individuals saying whatever they want with no comeback, no pushback from the media. Did I answer your question, or I think I might have missed the point, Henry?
Yeah, well, I was more thinking of like how does this sort of national security threat to the U.S. because another economic model is working? How does that like sort of drive their coup or their supported boycott of other elections?
Well, the United States, of course, is interested in those very resources that countries such as Bolivia and countries Chile and Venezuela have. And so the United States defines a threat to their national security as coming from any movement anywhere in the world which restricts their access to these parts of the world. The United States still follows the Monroe Doctrine with regards to Latin America. Monroe Doctrine means that only we, the United States, we have the right to control that hemisphere. I think this is what Henry was getting at. We have the right to control that hemisphere, and we have every right, being in North America, to stop other countries such as China, Europe, Iran, etc., from establishing relationship with Latin America. Now, that's not just Trump who resurrected that Monroe Doctrine, because Obama, not using the same words, when he established diplomatic relations with Cuba, reestablished diplomatic relations with Cuba in December 2014, he said something similar to that. He said that our policy failed, and as a result, we do not have as much influence as we want in Latin America. So Obama, in a cool sort of way, the cool guy, also has it ingrained in his thinking that the United States is beholden to have control over Latin America, whereas Trump does it in a more blatant way. We should not. I think we're touching on something that dealt with another area another time. Is that the whole issue? What has come about as an important issue since the pandemic and now is the rise of China. That is really important. China has arisen. I don't know what you think. China has arisen as a country that is able to deal with their own COVID situation and has provided tremendous help to other countries such as Venezuela, etc., other countries in Latin America, and more people are looking to China. China actually lifted the almost all of its people out of poverty at this present time. And it's an amazing accomplishment. And so China is also a threat to United States, especially when China is making inroads in a positive way by helping countries in Latin America, such as Venezuela, and Iran is also very much helping Venezuela and Cuba. So I think what we is coming out of this pandemic, a positive thing, is this push, what I would call a push for a multipolar world, consisting of Venezuela, Cuba, China, Vietnam, etc., Russia as well, against the hegemony of the United States. And my view is this is very good. Any country that opposes the hegemony of the United States, irrespective of their politics, for example, whether it's China or Iran or whatever, I think we have to support that push against the domination or the attempt by the United States to completely dominate the world.
Yeah, I think we'll close it off with that. But even though I have some other questions, but we would have to let you go on for. And just before we do so, like Bruno asked last time with our interview with Socialist Action, what's on your bookshelf at your back? We see a lot of.
Well, people get my latest two books just by keying in on Google Arnold August Fernwood, Fernwood. Arnold August Fernwood. My two books will come out, and there are 20% discount. And the code for the 20% discount is Cuba 20, and you get your 20% discount. For those people living in the United States, I don't know if you have any American listeners. It's the same thing, 20% discount. Just type in the name of my book, and the code is August 20.
Since you're an author, actually, I like asking authors who are their inspirations. Since you read books yourself, you're probably inspired by other authors. So who would you recommend the audience that you have to must read?
Must read?
Must read, yes.
As far as current writers from the United States, I'm very much a fan of Michael Parenti. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I know Parenti. He's done a lot of lectures in universities. I watched some of his videos. I read Black Shirts and Reds.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So I think he's an important reference. And in this debate that is taking place now, especially in the United States with regards to Noam Chomsky, people present him as the real alternative to the media, Michael Parenti. And there are, a lot of other books. But, in terms of my life, if you want to know part of my life, what pushed me, what attracted me right from the beginning when I was a student in 1960 was the work by Frantz Fanon, the Wretched of
the
the Wretched of the that had a major impact for me. I read that in one day, and my life has never been the same. Since then. So there are other examples such that over the period of time, books that have really made an impact on me. And I also have to say from the classics, Marx, if one reads the Communist Manufacture of Marx now, you may have a better understanding of what is happening in the world today. But, there are many books, but I think it's important that people read and reflect upon everything.